Right, first of all, first slide shows a plan of Seville, and it sort of expresses this organic sort of nature of the city, and that in effect is pretty much the sort of ethos of the practice I work with called Hombre de Piedra. The fact that form actually is the solution to the problems that you may encounter in design. And one of the key things that we're really looking at is taking like nature and looking at the structure of a leaf and looking at the cellular sort of build-up of that, and effectively what you find is that it's got a series of holes. So when the wind blows over a leaf, it's actually able to cool the leaf down, and that's why hence it's sort of got the longevity that it has. And from that you can actually see this is the plan at the top right left-hand corner is it shows the urban sort of fabric of Marrakesh city in the same sort of climate, and you can see the parallels between the cellular structure of a plant form and the city, and they're very, very similar. So the cooling effect of the leaf is effectively the same sort of an analogy used there in the city. And you can see the same pattern again in China, where they've used buried houses, and they use a series of sunken courtyards, which again use the same sort of process. And the other thing they were keen on developing was looking at, they actually conducted a private study on the profile and form of courtyards of historic buildings, and looked at the profile of that. So where you have like tall and thin courtyards, you tend to find that the bottom of the courtyard tends to be quite cool in terms of temperature, and whereas the more wider and open courtyard tends to be the opposite effect of that. And using CFD modeling, what you tend to find is that a lot of computerized sort of programs don't actually account for air movement as it moves across the building. And one thing they were keen on developing was new ways of sort of looking at CFD modeling with the University of Seville. And the really interesting sort of results came from that, and they were using that device to actually look at how temperature varied through a building through a cycle of say 1 or 2 years. This slide here shows a solar tree project which I was involved with, looking at basically the nature of a normal tree and how that casts shadows on the floor, and using the same sort of analogy on a more sort of man-made structure. So there's a twofold sort of purpose. Firstly, you provide shade, and secondly, it generates electricity which is sold back to the local grid. And that just shows a contextual sort of sketch. And the other thing they looked at is how can you actually reverse the sort of ventilation of a courtyard so it's more horizontal, because courtyards by their very nature, as everyone knows, have more vertical emphasis, so there's the cooling effect that could be achieved by looking at a horizontal flow of air. And from that study, what was found is that you can actually take air from a hot region from like the north to south, from the south elevation to the north, by just because of the temperature differential between the two areas. And they actually came up with this proposal here, which is a mixed-use development where you've got a petrol station, an office, and retail use as well. And this uses a series of horizontal sort of holes through the buildings to the building that transfers the air right the way through, use it as a cooling device. And that's me in the office. I think the other interesting thing is that the scale of the city really, and the culture, because after being somewhere for 2-3 weeks it's different, but actually living in a place for as long as we did for 3 months, you actually find that the actual culture begins to grow on yourself and you become immersed into that way of working in the city. I mean, everything's so individualized. I mean, here you've got Tesco's and TK Maxx and everything else, and you tend to build up this personal sort of relationship with like the people that are, you engage on a more of a human level. And the fact that you don't have like your back garden is effectively the public space that you have in the city. And just finish off with that, just to show like how human interaction sort of takes place. And my friend here, saw me my vegetables and what have you. And that's it. Thanks.